Well, they've had a chance to get involved with other people, a chance to sit across the classroom from them, to be in there with them, and not to be at home and hear that all black people are just animals or something, that they know now that they're human. The only difference is the color of their skin, and that doesn't really matter.
Do you feel like that you'll have any problems as you go through your education and on into later life?
Well, I guess everybody will have a few problems, but I'll be able to face them because I've had a chance to be myself around other people and to get to know them and let them get to know me.
The first major item for consideration in the House of Representatives today was the tuition bill. The House members agreed to raise tuition for Texas students from a $50 per semester fee to $7 an hour, or about $105 for a 15-hour semester. Out-of-state students would pay, rather than $200, approximately $700 per semester. This would bring in about $100 million in new revenue to the state treasury. However, Representative Jim Nugent of Kerr did gain approval of an amendment which would set aside about $5 million of those dollars for scholarships.
We will give each institution a very small fund, but at least one that is based on the number of students attending there for scholarship purposes, and it will be added to each year as the students attend the college. Mr. Speaker, I urge the adoption of the amendment.
The next item coming up here in the House was the big tax bill, as proposed by Representative Ben Atwell of Dallas, chairman of the House Revenue and Taxation Committee. But immediately an effort was made to put off consideration of this tax bill. The motion was made by Representative Bud Sherman of Fort Worth.
The reason I'm doing this is about a 30-day postponement is we have not yet passed the appropriations bill. We don't know exactly what we're going to need. And I object to giving the Appropriations Committee a certified check for $432 million and say, here, go buy yourself some goodies.
If we postpone this bill now, we will not know where we are on the appropriation bill or where we are on the tuition bill. This is, to my mind, getting on with our business. I think everyone in the chamber understands what this bill does.
So long as Irwin remains the most powerful man on the board, and although Lady Bird is on the board, he's still the most powerful man on the board, I don't think anything different is going to take place.
Are you suggesting that Frank C. Irwin will still run things?
Exactly what I'm suggesting.
Then why would he resign? Why not keep the position?
Why, he doesn't need to. He can get himself out of the limelight. I think there's been considerable pressure, I suspect, brought against him from powerful conservatives in Texas. He does have a habit of making rather intemperate public statements that clearly do the university no good.
Well, do you think John Peace would become chairman of the board just to be a yes man?
I can't possibly speculate on Mr. Peace's motives. I don't know Mr. Peace. But I haven't noticed much willingness on the part of the present board to disagree with any of Irwin's statements. There's been an astonishing unanimity. So why am I supposed to be different when Peace becomes chairman?
Here at the Postal Terminal Annex in Dallas today, officials of the U.S. Postal Service publicly unveiled a new device, which they say will speed up considerably the movement of business mail. The new device is called OCR, for Optical Character Reader. It's produced by Philco Ford and was installed in the Dallas facility some months ago for field trials. They say now the device on business mail, which is typewritten, it can process 42,000 pieces per hour. And they say that business mail, which is machine printed as opposed to being handwritten, makes up 85% of all the mail that moves across this country. At a news conference today, prior to the public showing of the OCR device, I took the opportunity to ask the regional director, W.L. Crawford, about another device that could speed up the mail service in the Dallas region. And that is that new post office facility which was promised so many years ago.
There will be a building. I've been assured of that. There will be a building in the near future, but it's the type of building that seems to be the question right now.
Are they still considering the site north of the turnpike?
Yes, very definitely.
With the same kind of facility that, maybe not physically, but the same kind of service facility that was proposed earlier?
Well, that's one of the questions I really couldn't answer. Whether we will have the service improvements, whether it will be a part of it in this building and part of it in the new building, I don't know. So that seems to be the question. How big the new building will be and what it will include. That's the best I know on it as of now.
One final question. You said in the near future. Would you speculate as to a date within a 5-year period?
Oh, I would say within 6 months there will be a decision made, very definitely.
It depends entirely on what the merits are when the request is made and what the conditions are and the sources of revenue that can support that.
Well, in your sources of revenue, in the section about taxes, we admit that we need them, but there are no solutions there. There are no sources for revenue.
Well, there are limitations because we may be precluded in some areas by taxes from other governmental units, so we have to look at it objectively at the time the budget is prepared. We won't know whether there'll be a need for it or not. After all, the construction that we've had that increases our tax base with the property values will give us some additional benefits, and the sales tax, if the economy picks up as it should, might afford some other. Now, the property tax only represents about 46% of the total revenue that we have. The water and sewer revenue bonds, about 20-some-odd%, and the sales tax, 15% of the budget. So we're talking about ad valorem tax about half of what the $167,000 or $167,000 million budget is during this current year.
What does a student have to give up in order to make good grades today?
I think absolutely nothing, because if he has the motivation to do what he wants to do, he can do it without giving up anything. He can play basketball, football, and still participate in his studies actively and with excellence.
What advice would you give to an incoming freshman just starting high school?
I would tell him to study a lot.
I can only draw a comparison between what's happening here in Dallas to what happened to Malcolm X and the Muslims. And I'll just have to leave it up to the people to make the decision. As of yesterday, Eldridge Cleaver's been purged too, so they can accuse him of being the FBI man too, you know. They had 5 Panthers were busted here in Dallas about 2 months ago. One's still in Dallas County Jail, and they accuse him of being the FBI man and a CIA agent. And he's been in Dallas County Jail now for 70-something days, and he was the Deputy Minister of Defense. So you can draw your own conclusions. Our plans are to continue to implement programs of the people, carry out the will of the people of this community, to move on with a soluble breakfast program, to implement a pest and rodent control program throughout the ghetto area, and implement child care centers, and we're going to start moving functionally against hard narcotics in the black community.
I was coming down Westmoreland, and I tried to make a turn on this little dirt road, and when my front tires hit the mud, the truck started sliding. I couldn't stop it, and it went over into the ditch, and it just laid over into the ditch. And after it settled down, I got out of it. I ran across a little bridge down here, and that's when it started catching a fire and started burning.
It's a quiet House chamber this evening, in contrast to a full day of debate, beginning at 9 o'clock this morning and ending at about 6 o'clock this evening, with literally hundreds of amendments, substitutes, amendments to amendments, and other proposals tossed into the hopper, debated on and acted upon one way or another here. The final outcome was 2 bills which would bring in close to $600 million in new money. They now go to the Senate, where there are expected to be some severe alterations. The final action taken here in the House was on number 1, a bill which would increase tuition for Texas students from $50 a semester to about $105 for 15 hours, and from $200 to $700 per semester for out-of-state students. Also, $5 million was set aside as scholarship funds. Then began work on the actual tax bill itself. Sales and auto taxes were raised to 4% statewide. There was a 10% professional sports and amusement tax put in, an increase in the corporation franchise tax, and several miscellaneous other taxes, raising varying amounts of money. There was also a major challenge here to put in a corporation income tax. The proposal was first made by Representative Tom Moore of Waco and rebutted by Representative Atwell.
My amendment would yield a net of $245 million in new tax money to be collected from corporations. This, you will note, is a little less than the additional burden we're placing on the consumer in the bill by raising the sales tax 3/4 of 1%. I am attempting to make a balance here between new money to be collected from the Texas consumers and new money to be collected from corporations, and I think it's a fair approach and one worthy of your consideration.
We're not going to pass any perfect tax bill, but I think we do have an excellent vehicle with the broader caption as you can get. I think that for all practical purposes, the House has defeated before what has been called the corporate profits tax, I think if we were going to take that tax, I think we need to study it and work on it and get an analysis of it.
Some House members claim a major breakthrough was made today because there's a certain group that always votes for appropriations but votes against taxes. But by bringing up the tax bill first today, they made them vote for the tax bill before they know just exactly what appropriations are going to be brought up here. The Senate will be considering the matter next. It'll probably be a couple of weeks before there's any serious debate over there on taxes. This is Roger McDonald, Channel 8 News on the Move in Austin.
Well, it's a fight that could never happen again. For the first time in history, we have got two undefeated heavyweight champions of the world. Muhammad Ali, never beaten, a 79% knockout record, deposed of his title by virtue of his beliefs. Joe Frazier, undefeated, a 79% knockout record, holding the official title, even though each man is getting $2,500,000 or approximately $900,000 net.
It'll be seen at 9:30 here in Dallas at the State Fair Music Hall and also the Fair Park Coliseum. Tickets are $12.50. Are tickets higher in other areas?
In London, for example, they charge £13, which is the equivalent of $30, and all 100,000 seats were sold. Makes it even more interesting is the fact that they're going to get the telecast by Telstar at 4 a.m. in the morning. So part of the event and part of the ticket is a champagne breakfast with sausage and eggs, and that'll start at 2 a.m. and it's black tie. You must have a black tie or you can't come to the fight. We've put together a 20-minute pre-fight film that will be shown on closed-circuit telecast 25 minutes before fight time. And then 5 minutes before fight time, Muhammad Ali will go to the safe in his dressing room, open up the safe, and take out an envelope that says, Muhammad Ali predicts. And he'll open up and he'll predict on closed-circuit television when he will win the fight.
Dallas has given itself a slogan, the City of Excellence, and it's become pretty widely known by that slogan. But now it's been given a new designation, and this one by impartial judges. Look magazine has named Dallas one of 11 All-American cities in the issue which hits the newsstands today. This designation is a particular honor to Mayor Eric Johnson and other city officials who took part in a ceremony today raising the All-America City flag above the City Hall.
The statement of our position, which the judges based their decision on in our favor, was that we had established a goals program in which, for the first time to our knowledge anywhere, the people had been invited in a completely democratic process to establish their own goals and say what kind of a city they wanted Dallas to be in the future, what things they needed and desired, and within the bounds of the possibility of reaching an attainable ideal, to say to us that they were willing to pay the prices that inevitably would be asked for achieving them.
Fort Worth in 1963 was designated an All-America City, and the Executive Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce, Ernest Larmer, says that it is quite an honor.
Jay, the greatest value, in our opinion, for the city of Fort Worth on receiving the All-America City Award is an intangible value in that it had a tremendous effect on the attitude of the citizens of our community. They became proud of their city. They became receptive to improving all facets of the community because they took it to heart that we do have an All-America City here.
Winning a contest from Look magazine or designating yourself as a city of excellence are not the things that make a city a good place to live. Mayor Eric Johnson pointed out that it is the people getting involved through Goals for Dallas that helps make Dallas a city of excellence or an all-American city. It's also pointed out that it's going to be up to the people to continue to work for improving the quality of life here, to continue this as a city of excellence or an all-American city. This is Roger McDonald, Channel 8 News on the Move.
Mineral wells will still be here 2 years from now when Fort Walters has been phased out as an Army helicopter training center. The question is, how much impact will the closing have on the city? Various civic leaders have differing ideas. Marshall Hamilton of the Mineral Wells Chamber of Commerce Military Affairs Committee says that the Pentagon decision to close Fort Walters was erroneous, that municipal bonds were sold and capital improvements were made on the basis of Army representations that the base was permanent. One study conducted by the Chamber indicates that over 60% of personal income in Palo Pinto County is derived from the base. The study also indicates that in Parker County next door, over 30% of personal income is dependent on Fort Walters. Despite these figures, Mineral Wells City Manager Joe Mickey says his people will somehow cope.
The community, I think, is adjusting to this shock that we're in at this point. But I think basically we realize that this has always been a possibility, and while it was one of shock, it's not one of surprise. It's one that we've lived with, and knowing that this is always a possible event that could happen in mineral wells, and we've taken this into account the last several years.
But the real problem is faced by the small businessman, the merchant who derives the greater part of his business from his military clientele.
Well, I'm sure you're going to find this to be said any place you go. It's as if the end of it is going to ruin the whole economy of mineral wells. There's no other activity here to keep us, help us keep the economy going in mineral wells if they close this base. And unlike a lot of the other businessmen in mineral wells, we've counted on the military support here and done everything in our power to fight this thing and keep the base going because we have excellent weather and excellent facilities here in Mineral Wells for the boys to fly, and we can't understand why that they would jeopardize such a beautiful base plus the weather conditions and move it to Alabama unless there's some strong politicking going on in Alabama and the White House.
So things are going to change in Mineral Wells. The city's mayor, Ellis White, told me that the closing could provide an impetus for new permanent business to move into the area because of the available labor force and the available space. But even Mr. White admitted that it's going to be an uncertain future for a few years. The question that keeps arising is, will the government really save enough money by moving the base to Fort Rucker, Alabama, to make the move worthwhile? Well, now, that's a question based on Southern political influence in Washington, so we may never really know the answer. Jay Lewis, Channel 8 News on the Move, Fort Walters, Texas.
Excuse me, sir. Would you sign this petition? It's against, got a petition against the proposed increases in college tuitions. We've got a petition. Excuse me, sir. We've got a petition against the proposed increases in tuition, and we'd like you to sign it. Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Hello, Mark. Excuse me. How's the reaction been so far?
Pretty good. We've gotten quite a few people to sign these.
Out of, say, every 10 that come by, how many would you say are signing?
About 6 or 7.
Do you think it's really running that high?
Yes, I do.
How do you think the reaction will be the rest of this day?
I think it will get better as people start realizing that there's more of us around the city.
What are you going to do with the petitions when you're through?
Well, next Thursday we're taking them down to Mike McClure down in Austin, and we're going to give them to him.
All right, thank you very much. All right, the object is to try to influence the Texas legislature to do away with those tuition hikes that are upon them. The college students, of course, would rather not have this. We find a number of people on the street who would rather not have it, but after all, somebody, somehow, has to pay. This is Jim Mitchell, Channel 8 News on the Move.
The woman plays an important part in distributing education, just as the man does. She's interested in selling and marketing and retailing today, being able to do something different besides staying at home, being a housewife.
The trend across our nation today is for more women to be working and in jobs that heretofore they have not held. Does this go along with the same theory in distributive education?
Yes, I believe it does. Women are getting out more. They are working more. Now you find that mostly in families and things, you'll find the man and the wife both work to help to have the luxuries and things that they'd like to have.
A group of disappointed men filed out of this room at Southwestern Medical School this morning. The reason for the disappointment? The bids they were to submit today for Phase 1 expansion program at the school will not be accepted.
Yesterday, in the late afternoon, the university system was advised by the Regional Office of Department of Health, Education, and Welfare that pending an official interpretation of the President's proclamation of February the 23rd, pending an official interpretation of that proclamation, the regional office advised the university system that it could not receive and open bids today as scheduled.
Now these fellows are champions from their regional districts. Let's start them off right now with a big hand for this final round.
We feel on the surface our President's proclamation is quite easy to understand, and we don't see that it should cause a postponement of bids. We've seen other government projects that have been canceled, postponed indefinitely, but this job appeared to be going on smoothly until we see the phone calls last night saying that bids would not be received today.